What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Gale in Scream 6. Go over her character, what I liked, what I didn't like, and go from there. A couple things I want to say right before we get started, though. Well, number one, I want to do a couple more of these characters as the days go on. Eventually, I'm going to start to do those rankings. So I'll rank, all the openings of the movie, all the endings, all the killers, a bunch of kind of fun ones that are a little bit different than even those. Got a lot planned, and then, of course, just waiting for that Scream 7 announcement. So that's one thing. Number two is actually I've made a new Twitter. So I got the okay that I'm allowed to make a new Twitter. I'm not getting the old account back. The link's in the description and in a pinned comment if you want to follow me there. Help the Scream representation of my Twitter. I'd appreciate it. If you don't want to, if you hate Twitter, I totally get it. Trust me, I hate Twitter kind of too. There we go. There's the two announcements. Okay, so now let's get back to Gale. I want to talk about the one negative I have with her because I actually largely very much like her in this movie. I have one negative. Let's talk about that and get that out of the way first. And it's the writing of the book. Now, this was a thing that I think Courtney Cox talked about this in an interview a week or two before the movie came out. And people are like, oh man, I don't know. And then the movie comes out and they say it's kind of a back and forth thing for me, and I'll explain why. It's a back and forth thing because on one side of things, they kind of ignored it so much after it happened, right? So, like, they have the back and forth. Sam and Tara are mad at her, and they have that whole thing. I think that's a great scene. It further kind of shows, like, oh, come on, Gale. Like, you're going back to that old, tricks again. I'll talk about some of the lines they say and stuff as this video goes on. But then after that, it's never, like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to the movie. So I get, like, for me as a viewer, and I did think this, and I'm still thinking it now, should it be a big deal for me? If it's not a big deal for the movie, if they're going to dedicate one scene to it, the punch kind of gag that they always do, they do all that. And then after that, it truly doesn't matter. She apologizes and all's forgiven. If it's such a meaningless thing in that way, should it be the same way to me? I think I can still criticize it because if it's such a small thing to the film, which clearly it is, it's such a small thing. Why did you do it? Why did you do it in the first place? I wouldn't say like it hurts her character because I kind of think really in 5 and 6, her character is very stagnant. She's not kind of evolving. Really, I'd say 4, well, you have all the OGs, right? The original 3. There's a lot of progression there. And then in 4, she really kind of took that step up where she's conflicted with her life. But in terms of like the good guys, like she's on their side largely. I guess you look to 5 and she doesn't really have any ulterior motives, right? She's got the thing with Dewey going on with that, she was kind of sent there, but largely like she's just there to help. And she's basically there to help again in 6. So from a character perspective, she's not growing. And I would argue in 5 or in 6, but specifically 6, it's more of just the next thing in her character line. I guess you could argue that's a weakness, and I would not stop you there. You could counter with, well, she has the reactions to Dewey. And I do think that's important, and we'll talk about that in terms of a strength. But that would be the weakness. Sam basically said what we were saying. You know what I mean? You said you wouldn't write the book, and then you wrote the book anyway. And then, she says like the line, and she said that was literally an exact quote, from the book. That was a great scene. I think it played on Sam and Tara really well. They did well. Courtney Cox did well. The punch, again, I actually thought was really, really good. That was the first time. It was largely for Sydney. Like, largely that entire scene was to give an excuse, like rightfully so, give an excuse for why Sydney wasn't there. So I actually think that scene was really good. Again, just on Gale's character, right? Then we see her again. She apologizes. They go through the shrine. I liked this quite a bit because you get the Dewey thing, right? Again, this is a way you can evolve her character, can continue her character, and I think there was that a little bit. I think she's just not in the movie enough to, like, super engaged in that character and, like, where she's going. But you can do a little of it, and they did, right? She feels very sad. She kind of feels like she's lost someone. She's almost coping. Well, she is. She's coping with the book. She's also coping with, like, her boyfriend, right? Which she doesn't really care about. Which I kind of didn't mind. You got to get over the fact that Quinn is the one that, like, threw him through a bookshelf, right? As soon as you get over that power, the power dynamic there, and then, Gale's the phone call thing where, the muscles didn't save him, and she says, obviously it didn't. I liked that. that. Not necessarily because of the strength thing, but it further shows like Gale didn't care. Gale didn't care about him. Gale really, the book thing too. It's like she's just doing it. And I understand it. I think Ryan Showers said something very clever on Twitter a while ago where it is a character moment actually to her where like she didn't want to do it, but without Dewey, she kind of reverted back. So it is kind of a character moment for her. She reverted back into it. I like that. I mean, if you think about it in that perspective, I think it actually works quite well. So you had all that. You had a reaction to Dewey. And then really the next thing and the only other thing she's in this movie is her phone call, right? Very long scene. And so this is where most of the dissection, I suppose, goes. Love it. For any negative I can pick out, I suppose, of her character throughout this movie, that chase scene, that phone call was, to be honest, it really was everything you would hope. And to come in the 6th movie, and again, to come with a character that, give or take is kind of stagnant, right, in terms of her role, to give her that. And I mean, that's the main part. You could argue if you took that part away and you just gave her like 6-7 more minutes in the movie that were kind of spaced out and more like dialogue, kind of like her and Sam. I thought the her and Sam thing was extremely well done. Kind of was like, oh man, I kind of want to know about Gale's parents now, right? She brings them up. But that was a good moment. Again, another reflection upon Dewey, a thing where, she has Sam's back. It was, I think, a little bit more of a subtle way of what Kirby said at the end, right? Kirby at the end is like, hey, you need me, call me. She's probably saying that for her agent to the, to Paramount as well. If you need me, call me. I'll always be there. Us survivors need to stick together. That was very like obvious, like, hey, I'll be around if they want me to be around. I'll be around. Gale's thing was more, hey, loners, which you are, which you could argue because Sam does have Tara. Sam now has Danny. Now you could lose both of those or at least one of them, but she would still have the other, right? But us loners basically have to stick together. By the way, the Dewey music playing in the background, like the sheriff theme, love it, absolutely. And I caught that immediately, and I was like, oh my god, this is so great. So that was a really good character moment. And then you got the chase and the phone call, and like I said, it's everything you kind of wanted it. I think the dynamic, listening to her kind of combat Ghostface or Roger on the phone, I thought was phenomenal. Her kind of getting the one up on him, the putting it on hold thing, I do believe is iconic. I think you got to go like 5, 10, 15 years before we can maybe start to throw that word around, but I think it's going to be an iconic scene because I remember it wasn't that long ago watching it for the first time right in theaters. And when she says that, can I put you on hold, please? And it's like, and he said, huh? It's so good. I kind of chuckled, but as soon as you chuckle, you realize, oh my God, this is just Gale being Gale. She's so clever and she knows what she's doing. She wants to know where the phone is. So, kind of reversing the call and then immediately turning around and shooting. And you hear from the grunt, although again, it's supposed to be Quinn, but it definitely sounds like a male voice. I think it's because it's Rogers. Like, it's supposed to be the modulator for Ghostface. That's why it's like a male grunt. But you hear it. So like she nails the target. She does hit Quinn. Obviously she doesn't, vastly injure her, but I thought that was fantastic. Even the chase before then, obviously the fight, I would consider it. I'd say before she gets the one up on Ghostface, it's more of a chase, which I thought was good. You can't do too much with like a 20-story, you're on the 20th floor or whatever. You can go outside, but you can't do much out there because if you fall, it's game over. So you got to go back inside. How does Ghostface take, by the way, a cast iron skillet to the face? I don't know how Quinn managed that one. And yet again, the brick broke her teeth, but a skillet, which I believe would probably be almost the exact same thing. That obviously, the Ghostface mask, I think, has like bulletproof armor in it. But so you had the chase, and then you had the fight scene after. And I'll tell you, I predicted this when we saw the trailer. And this is the martial artist kind of side of me, I suppose. I gotta throw that out there. In the trailer, when you see Ghostface coming, down with the knife, I had said, I just don't see a way. Her arms are like up, right? Because she has the gun. So like, there's just no way she doesn't get injured there. I remember saying that when we saw that trailer. I don't see, that doesn't mean she dies. I just don't see how she gets out of that unharmed. And, truth be told, you see the movie, she gets stabbed, right there, and then she gets stabbed again. I'll tell you though, the whirlwind of emotions that they put me through with Gale was incredible. It shows me, here's what it shows. that she's so likable and that she's always been a fan favorite. She's always been one of the better characters. Love the Ghostface thing back to her, right? Where like you would have made a great killer. There's just so many good moments in this phone call. When he's mocking her about like the Dewey thing, like you weren't there to see him kind of cry and all that stuff was so good. Talking about, Sydney never made sense to be the killer. Dewey was the fan favorite, but you, Gale, you would have made a great killer. Like, there's just so many iconic scenes. And then the fight, and it's like, I thought she was going to die. There was a moment when she closes her eyes and Sam starts to cry, which, again, I think really reflects on Melissa's acting and just how well the entire scene was kind of organized because she sold it. Like I was with Sam. I wasn't like bawling my eyes out, but I was with Sam where as soon as she started to cry and Gale closed her eyes and like the paramedics were walking in, I'm sitting there like in the theater and I'm not crying. I'm definitely getting emotional where it's like, did they just do it? You see all the interviews afterwards where they talk about, hey, we're sorry about the Dewey thing. Gale was never going to die. Really, none of these people were ever going to die. We knew that going into the movie, but you don't know that in the movie. You know what I mean? When you're watching it live, anything could happen. These characters could die. Chad could have died, right? So you're watching it, and I bought it. I don't know, like, because she said the line, right? Like, tell Sydney he never got me. My wife, on record, that moment, until right now, and I believe her, she said when she said that line, she knew you're safe, right? Because if you're going to tell Sydney that Ghostface didn't kill her, but she's dead, well, obviously he killed her, so she's lying, right? I kind of took it more in the moment that maybe Gale was doing one kind of last clever line, like she wants to kind of defend her character. So it's like, tell Sydney, someone who I respect and someone who has also been chased, right? Tell her he never got me, even though he did, but like, let's protect my character, like Gale Weathers, let's protect her. That's how I and I think if she died, that's how I would have read that scene. That's how I would have read that dialogue to tell Sydney that. Instead, it was literally, he didn't get me. I survived it. But I got close. I mean, I think if she would have died, I probably would have started to cry because I was right there. I was emotional. I think I was more emotional than I was with Dewey. Dewey, I just kind of saw coming. It was still so sad because it's like, oh my God, like you did it. You killed Dewey. And it's like, you're never going to get that character back. But, I kind of knew that was happening. I knew that was coming. I for sure predicted it. I kind of knew based off the trailers and stuff. I think it would have been a shock almost if he didn't die in Scream 5. So going into 6, it's like, I think Gale's going to get injured in that scene. And I actually predicted that, didn't I? That Gale would either get injured and taken to the hospital, so she'd be away from the final act. Literally nailed it. This one was more surprising because it's like she was so close to death, and I really didn't think we would get there, right? So I think they did a fantastic job overall with her. Limited time, limited amount of things I guess you can do. But, for as much as her character, relatively staying still, what more can you? I mean, you got to focus on the core. They're the ones moving. Sam is the one evolving. I mean, all of them. Mindy maybe stayed relatively stagnant. But Chad, holy God, he's taken a step up. Sam, she's taken a step up. Tara, same thing. These characters, they're the ones that are growing. I don't really expect... Kirby, I think, actually kind of evolved quite a bit in this movie. Where we're at with Gale, I don't know how much of a push forward she's going to get. And, does she really need it? I think in some ways she needs it or she can have it, but, not in every way, I suppose. So let me know what you all think in the comments about Gale. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.